Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I, 26 male, graduated from university a few months ago. I had tried really hard to find a job that suited my qualifications, but it was really difficult. It seemed that all the roles I was applying for were super competitive and I hardly even got any interviews. This was totally demoralizing, and after a while, I decided that I'd be happier working in hospitality or something. I found a job as a waiter at an upscale restaurant, which I was pretty happy with. My parents lived about half an hour away from where I worked. For context, I come from an upper middle class background and they're pretty well off. From the outset, they had made no attempt to hide the fact that they didn't like me working as a server. They kept saying that they expected more from me and that it was embarrassing their only child was serving other people in a restaurant. It was completely unfair that they were so judgmental. Even though they could have afforded it, they never offered me any financial help, never even contributed to paying for my college or anything. Their combined income was too high for me to qualify for any grants or scholarships for university. This meant that I ended up having to go to a low-tier university and work part-time so that I could pay for it myself. So whenever they started saying that I should be searching for a better job, I reminded them of this. One day, my family surprised me by popping in. I had no idea what they were doing there because they had made it crystal clear that they didn't approve of what I was doing with my life. It wasn't only my parents. They had brought other members of my family too, along with some family friends. There were 12 of them in total, so a big party. All of them had also acted like total snobs about the fact that I was waiting on people. My parents asked for me as a server, and I had no choice but to agree. Since I didn't want to look unprofessional, my family ordered a big bunch of stuff, including the most expensive dishes we had. Remember that this restaurant was a pretty expensive place as it was. They were also acting super condescending towards me. They were making such a mess on the table and on the floor for me to clean up. It seemed like they were trying to humiliate me as much as they could. I couldn't wait to see out my shift and go home. After they had finished eating, I cleared the table. While I was clearing, my parents casually said that today's bill would be cut into my savings. But it wouldn't be a problem because I was surely rich enough from working here. There were obvious sarcastic undertones. Everybody around the table was laughing at this too. This comment made me halt, and I asked them what they meant by it. My parents reminded me that this was going to be my treat to them. My other family members were quick to agree with this. I started getting annoyed and told them that it definitely wasn't going to be the case and left. But I had a bad feeling about the whole thing. When I came over with their bill, they asked me to pay for it since I had apparently promised to. I had obviously done no such thing. They knew that I wasn't exactly being paid a fortune for being a server at a restaurant and didn't have any cash to spare for anything besides rent and food, etc. But they were insisting and caused a huge scene at the restaurant, to the point where the manager had to intervene. My parents then went on to tell the manager that I had promised to pay for their meal, with all my other family members backing them up. I told my manager that this was a lie and refused to pay for their expensive bill. One of my cousins volunteered to show some private messages where I had promised to pay as evidence. I got really confused because there was no way I had sent anything even mildly suggesting that. He showed us some screenshots that were so clearly made using those fake text apps, I'm guessing because I never sent them. At this point, my manager lost his cool. He told my family that he had no idea what was going on, but that they would better pay or else he would call the cops. My parents put up a fight about this, causing a ruckus in the restaurant, so one of the workers ended up actually calling the cops. My family got scared by this, so they finally paid and left in a big hurry. I had no idea why they were saying that I was going to pay or what the hell was happening. Now they keep harassing me via phone calls and texts, calling me an asshole for embarrassing them in public. They're also relentlessly sending me insults for being a waiter. I can't deal with confronting them at the moment, and I'm genuinely confused about the situation. My manager wasn't impressed with me either. I feel like he believes I had played a part in this too. Am I the a-hole? Update. I decided it was time to call my parents back to confront them about what they did. They weren't even slightly apologetic about it, but instead berated me again. They kept asking if I was going to get a real job now. I was confused by this initially, but I realized that they thought that I had been fired after the whole incident. So it turns out that the whole thing was a plan to get me fired. Apparently, my whole extended family felt the need to save me from being a waiter, because it was so embarrassing to the whole family that I was a server. I was so furious that I ended up screaming down the phone at them, that if they were so concerned, they could have found me a job instead of pulling these cheap tricks and then hung up. I've realized that they're a bunch of toxic people who have no place in my life. I mean, it isn't like I never asked around for favors to land a job. My uncle literally owns a moderate-sized travel agency and knows tons of people, but refused to put in a good word for me at a job as a favor. I doubt any of these people pulled the stunt with my best interest in mind. For the sake of my mental health, I've decided to cut them out. I've now gone no contact with all of them. OP, I'm so sorry about the whole situation. I can't imagine how embarrassing the whole thing must have been for you. Unfortunately, your family is the definition of toxic. If your parents are embarrassed about being a waiter to make money, then they should give you all their credit cards or find you a better job. It's as simple as that. But instead, they resorted to causing a scene at your workplace so you can get fired. If you had better job offers, I'm sure you wouldn't settle for being a waiter. You are right to cut them off. Cut them out of your life entirely, since they are of no use to you. Story 2. My parents and I, female, differ in opinion on a lot of things. I studied climate change, but my parents still think it's a hoax and usually make fun of my research and my passions for space and physics. They paid for my schooling in physics, but I don't think they actually thought I would finish the degree. The entire time, my dad kept trying to convince me to get an easier degree in something that would make it easier for me to get a job when my husband has to move around for work. That was just one of the things he said, and he has never apologized for any of it, but has told me he's proud of me now. Which another thing is, I came out as bisexual to them in high school, which ended mostly in them yelling at me. They have since ignored my sexuality, insisting I'll get married to a man and have children someday. I also don't want children. I have given up on correcting them that I might want to marry a woman someday instead. They are also not okay with me being agnostic over Catholicism. I still believe in there being a God. But I don't agree with the Catholic Church for a lot of reasons, and my dad has expressed concerns about me going to hell. My mom is a little more chill with it, but she follows my dad's lead more often than not, and has only very recently started defending me against him. I feel really bad about wanting to stop contact with them, but every time I talk to them, I don't feel like they're not talking to me, but whatever image of a perfect daughter they have in their head. My mom is starting to change a little, but it seems like my dad is still the same. They've never known anyone I dated, and I'm afraid of their reaction to me getting serious with a woman, and I think that's been holding me back from dating in general. I never feel like myself when I visit home because I have to hide so much of myself, and even then we get into arguments constantly. I've moved to a different state for a job, and I don't want to be tied to them anymore. But I feel an obligation to repay them for helping me with school and fully paying for my car. I pay for all my other expenses now, but I don't have to worry about student loans because of them. So am I the a-hole for wanting to end contact with them, even if they are kinda changing too? Edit. I see a couple comments saying I should tell them how I'm feeling, stop bringing up these topics, and/or not to tell them about my life. I am doing all of that. I initially came out to them because I felt like they would be accepting, and I hadn't been given the impression that they would have such a bad reaction. Since high school, a switch was flipped, and they constantly bring up what I've stated before. At family gatherings, I never engage in debates. I know I can't win. But it's hard, sitting quietly and letting everyone shit on my career or lack of dating. Also, I want to add, I do love my parents, and stopping contact does hurt me. But it's hard being around them over the phone or otherwise. I guess I already have limited contact and they only call weekly right now. I hadn't really thought of letting contact die naturally, but I think that may be the course I want to take. I think I will look into how I can pay them back for my car at least too. Thank you for all the advice. OP, your parents choose to pay for your things. They brought you into this world and have an obligation to care for you. If they could afford these things, I think it makes perfect sense for them to provide them, and that does not leave you with any obligation. I think you are right to go low contact. If they reach out to you, talk to them. Anytime they bring up a topic that doesn't work for you, it's okay to cut them off and say bye. If you do it often enough, they might actually get a clue. If not, at least you took control of the conversation.